What I later discovered. During the years I spent as a PhD student at the University of Notre Dame, I threw myself headlong into my studies. I went beyond just reading the writings of modern scholars and dove into the original sources themselves. Good luck, because there's not many left. I don't think there's any. Anyways, the Hebrew Bible, the Greek New Testament, ancient Jewish writings outside the Bible, and the works of the ancient Christian writers known as the Church Fathers. I took courses in advanced Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. I even learned Coptic, a form of ancient Egyptian, just so I could read the Lost Gospel of Thomas in its original language and see what it had to say. During these intense but unforgettable years, I made 3 important discoveries. First and foremost, given my interest in the quest for Jesus, I began looking for the anonymous copies of the Gospels that I had learned about during my undergraduate studies. Surely, I thought, there must be some anonymous manuscripts, since every textbook I had read started with the assertion that the 4 Gospels were originally anonymous, and that we don't know who actually wrote them. But I wanted to see for myself. Guess what? I couldn't find any anonymous copies. I even asked one of my professors, where are all the anonymous manuscripts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? That's a good question, he said. You should do some research. And I did. What I quickly discovered is that there are no anonymous manuscripts of the 4 Gospels. They don't exist. In fact, as we will see in chapter 2, the only way to defend the theory that the Gospels were originally anonymous is to ignore virtually all the evidence from the earliest Greek manuscripts and the most ancient Christian writers. Moreover, when you compare what the earliest church fathers tell us about the origins of the 4 Gospels with what those same church fathers say about the origins of the lost Gospels, the differences are striking. As we will see, there are compelling reasons for concluding that the 4 Gospels are first-century biographies of Jesus, written within the lifetimes of the apostles and based directly on eyewitness testimony. Cool. Second, and equally important, the more I studied first-century Judaism, the more I began to see clearly that Jesus did claim to be God, but in a very Jewish way. And he does so in all 4 first-century Gospels. But in order to see this clearly, you have to take one very important step. You have to go back and read the Synoptic Gospels from an ancient Jewish perspective. Otherwise, it's easy to miss what Jesus is really saying about himself. To be sure, Jesus doesn't go around shouting, "I am God." But this doesn't mean that he didn't claim to be divine. As we will see, Jesus reveals the secret of his identity by using riddles and questions. And if you squint and think exactly what everyone wants you to think, then you can come out with the conclusion they want you to come up with. Okay. In fact, it was precisely because his audience understood that Jesus was claiming to be God that some of the Jewish authorities charged him with blasphemy and handed him over to the Romans to be crucified. And by the way, in a first-century Jewish context, it wasn't blasphemy to claim to be the Messiah, but it was blasphemy to claim to be God. Third, and finally, and most important of all, I gradually realized that confusion about who Jesus claimed to be is everywhere, and it's spreading. Despite the arguments of writers like C.S. Lewis, the old notion that Jesus was just a prophet or a great moral teacher is still alive and well. It's in the universities and college classrooms, where many students arrive as Christians and leave as agnostics or atheists. It's in the television documentaries that air right around Christmas and Easter, that seem specially designed to raise doubts about the truth of Christianity and are often full of everything except actual history. It's in the dozens of books that are published every year claiming to reveal that Jesus was really a zealot, or that he was really married to Mary Magdalene, or whatever the latest theory is. In fact, the idea that Jesus never claimed to be God may be more widespread today than ever before in history. Again, who cares what he claims? That's why I finally decided to write this book. In it, I want to lay out the case for Jesus as I see it. I should emphasize from the start that it's not a complete case. That would need a much longer book. It's also not written for scholars, though I cite lots of them in the endnotes. It's written for anyone who has ever had questions about exactly who Jesus of Nazareth claimed to be. And in my experience as a professor, that's a lot more people than you might think. It includes both Christians and not Christians, practicing and non-practicing, believers and doubters, and those who are a little bit of both. In fact, many people who do believe that Jesus is God often can't explain why they believe it, because they were told as children, And many people who think that Jesus was only a good teacher or prophet often haven't looked carefully at exactly who the Gospels say he claimed to be. In both cases, people are often not able to see Jesus through ancient Jewish eyes. As a result, it's easy to miss the Jewish roots of Jesus' divinity. So if you've ever wondered, did Jesus really claim to be God? And how do we know? Then I invite you to come along with me on this quest. Whether you're a Christian, Jewish, Muslim, agnostic, or atheist, whatever your religious outlook, if you've ever wanted to judge for yourself the biblical and historical evidence for Jesus, then this book is for you. We will begin where my professor began all those years ago, with the origins of the Gospels. Were the 4 Gospels originally anonymous?